Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fireside Adoptees Constellation page, Constellation and Legislation Group. We are really pleased to have an interview here for you. For the time being, our Fireside Adoptees interviews have been a little bit on hold, on pause, while we rested a bit, and we're glad to be bringing those back to you now and look forward to bringing others to you in the future here. So let me introduce our guest tonight here. Mariela Andersen is a Colombian adoptee raised in the United States. She's the author of two books, including Home, Sweet Casa, A Journey to the Universal Heart, where she recounts the twists and turns of exploring her birth country and connecting with those who share her DNA. Mariela finds joy in sharing her story with others, not only to shed light on the adoptee experience, but also to inspire readers to challenge their own perceptions and embark on a journey of self-discovery. So glad you're here, Mariela. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I was really happy that it's always a special pleasure for me to have guests who are international adoptees. We're transracial and international adoptees because I feel particularly drawn to the stories because as a domestic adoptee myself, you have perspectives and experiences that are enriching for me and help me to understand more about the rounded out experience of adoptees. So again, appreciate you being here, but I wonder if we could just start with a couple questions here. And one of them, of course, is if you
Yeah.
could just really give a quick rundown of, I say this as though it's an easy thing to do, of your adoptee story, maybe just a really brief outline, and then we will cover some more details.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I'll try to make this as much in a nutshell as possible. But I was adopted from Colombia when I was about 5 weeks old, Bogota, Colombia. And I was adopted by my white American parents who had already adopted a son from Colombia 2 years prior. And I was brought back to Georgia, where I was raised in the suburbs of Atlanta. And then about 2 years later, we all went back as a family to Colombia and adopted my younger brother. So all three of us are from Colombia. And just growing up, we always knew we were adopted. It was never something that was taboo to talk about, which I really appreciate my parents doing that. It was something that I felt like I could talk to them about if I had any questions about it. And I think well, it's funny because I think I went through phases of like really owning that like Colombian adoptee identity. And then as I went into my teenage years, I almost kind of would forget that I was adopted because I think I was just involved with being a social teenager. And then in my early college years, I started questioning things again and just kind of wanting to know where I came from. And I had connected with some Latinos in college that were also, some of them were Colombian. And so they kind of took me under their wing and taught me about the culture. And so I started searching for my biological mom. And within a few months, I found her. And I went back to Colombia about 6 months after finding her. And I have this like huge Colombian family over there. And there's probably like 35 people meeting me at the airport, which was very emotionally overwhelming. And I was going back probably about every 6 months or so. And it was really good to just really be able to like see like because I had always been a proud Colombian, but I didn't really know what that meant per se until I actually went to Colombia. And then I was like, oh, okay. And I could kind of do the comparison of like, oh, like they do this and I do that. Like that must be in my DNA. Or, they don't do this. Like that must be from my upbringing, you know? So that kind of cool comparison thing, nature versus nurture. And yeah, and so I wrote a book about my experience of going back to Colombia. And then, yeah, like I showed before, it's called Home Sweet Casa, A Journey to the Universal Heart. And yeah, I've been back 9 times total. And I always had this like fantasy idea of what my relationship with my biological mother specifically, and then everyone else too, what that was going to look like. And I've had to go through a lot of my own identity things even after finding them to realize that like, because I kind of thought that like that was going to be like the missing puzzle piece of life was finding them. And then I realized, oh God, there's so many more puzzle pieces and they're all scattered everywhere and I don't even know, you know? Um, so yeah, I've had to do a lot of inner work and I'm like really big on like self-care and all that jazz. So um yeah, oh, I guess I'll just and it was saying, yeah, it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows like I had originally thought it might be, and we can get more into that as we go on. But yeah, I feel like that's a little summary.
Great. That's a great summary. Very helpful. Thank you. And provides some vantage points also for me as someone who has some questions for you. And I know we've talked a little bit about what sorts of things
Yeah,
that we would discuss. And you kind of have outlined here a little bit about the experience of being in a family that was different than you growing up. And I wondered
right.
if that manifested in differences growing up, and were you acutely aware of them? I know you've just said, well, I forgot about it for a while, and I can certainly understand that when your mind was in adolescence and into the teen years. But were there differences you were aware of growing up, and were they always something that you had the freedom to talk about with your parents?
Um, I don't know if I was just like oblivious to any maybe like outside influences that maybe people had treated me different or something and I just didn't recognize it. But to be honest, I don't think there's nothing that sticks out per se of like a big difference between me and my parents. Because like, I mean, I will say like my younger brother has darker skin, so maybe if like his answer to this question might be different than my answer to this question. Because in some ways, I feel like I was like passing as like American, but as an adult, a lot of people just assume I'm Latino, and a lot of people talk to me in Spanish, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I look Hispanic, like I'll forget sometimes. But yeah, so nothing per se like sticks out as far as differences, but I will say like again, like my parents were so good about opening up like to me about everything and then letting me have questions and like so much to the point where as a child I remember thinking like if I didn't want to go to bed on time, I would say, Mom, Dad, like I want to talk about my adoption. And they would drop everything and we would stay up later and talk about the adoption because they would pull out the folder and I would look at my little baby bracelet and like from the hospital and all my documents were in Spanish too, but we would just go through them and it was like the only tangible thing I had. And yeah, like I didn't have any pictures of my biological family either. And that's actually what was the catalyst to me finding my birth mom because I wanted originally just to see a picture of her and I reached out to the orphanage and I got the picture. And once I had it, I was like, okay, now I need to know this person. Um so so yeah. So my parents were always really supportive. And also and I put this in my book as well. Apparently when I was like really young, just to make sure that my mom and dad like instilled a positive perspective of my adoption. Apparently in my crib, they would be like, while I was in my crib, they'd be like, "You're adopted, yay!" and just like make it positive. Um, but also they were really good at when I was searching for my birth mom, that not to like feed a lot of delusions, just kind of be realistic. Like they didn't want to say, oh, like expect the worst or anything like that, but I could tell that they were a little nervous of what I was going to find and how I was going to be received or rejected. And so they were a little bit protective of me during that part of my journey. But I really do think it was just, yeah, like them being like protective parents. And yeah.
So as you said, you always had some kind of some sort of an interest, but it was wanting the picture, right? That was a catalyst for it, for wanting the search.
Yeah,
How
when I
how
was like
old would you have been at that
19.
point? How old
What
were
did
you
you
at
just
that
say?
point? How old were you
I was around
when you?
19.
Oh, 19.
Yeah, I was
Okay,
about
thank you.
19
Yeah.
years old. Yeah. And
And
my
so
parents let
no,
me
go
just
ahead,
add one
please.
little
Go
thing
ahead.
I forgot.
Yep.
So growing up, my parents would tell me that the orphanage that I was from in Colombia had a big wall with a bunch of pictures of biological mothers on it, and that when I was 18, if I wanted, I could go back and see that picture. And I had kind of just thought, okay, well, that's something I can't do until I'm 18 anyways, so maybe it was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. And then when I was 19, I was like, oh yeah. I forgot about that. And now I'm 19. So that's when I emailed the orphanage because I was like, well, now I shouldn't have to travel there. We have scanners, So they just scanned the document and sent it over. And yeah, so that was the first time I saw my birth mom's face and I broke down crying and showed my parents and um yeah, and after that I was like I have to know her at least just to tell her I'm okay because there's always this feeling inside of me that felt like
Yeah.
maybe she was feeling guilt or questioning her decision and I just really felt like I needed to like put her at ease that like I'm okay. And so I kind of went into the whole search thinking that, like, even if she just rejects me, I just want her to know I'm okay and that she made a good choice. And then, of course, it opened up into more than I expected. But yeah.
I hear often from intercountry adoptees how difficult the search can be, and how some of them, even some of the Colombian adoptees, and they're probably people that you would be well familiar with, have gone on
Yeah.
searches. Just I'm going down there. I don't know what I'm going to find. I don't have very many leads, and they'll just go to the country and look around and try to dig up what they can. But it sounds really amazing that you had this connection you had already, the information from your parents, you knew about the orphanage, you contacted them, and I can imagine that aided so much. Maybe it didn't feel as much like a search, but more like, what am I going to do now? I have the information. And then you obviously decided to go.
Yeah, so actually, just to add another piece in, after I got her information, I couldn't like because I tried to just type it in on Google and find something, but nothing really was coming up. And if it was like in Spanish, and I could find out where she was registered to vote, but that was like pretty much it. And I had connected with the Adopt from Colombia group on Facebook, and I met someone on there from Norway who knew a search agent living in Colombia, or maybe they were in Norway too. Somehow I got connected to them, and this search agent had never had a client from the United States. And I was a college kid at the time, but she agreed to help me for free if I would refer her. And so I was like, yes. And so I guess her cousin or someone in Colombia had maybe was a police officer and had access to like a database where they could just type in someone's identification number and figure out their address and phone number. So she got that information for me, and that was probably, I don't know, at least a month after I had gotten that original picture. And so there was still like some uncertainty. Like I didn't have all the information. I had to kind of search for it still. And even in that, I had to kind of think, well, what could I find? Because I had connected with other adoptees from Colombia who had found
Yeah,
out that their parents had died, had found out that they were kidnapped and they never even were given away. There was no consent there. Just like horrible stories, or even had found them and then the parent like denying that they were theirs. And so it was like, oh my God, like I just didn't know what to expect. And I just tried to have like as much as like a neutral, detached perspective as possible, which is easier said than done. Um, and speaking of detached, it's so funny because, or I don't know if it's funny, but ironic, when I found her, I was in a very like shocked state. Like I thought I would have been like more emotional, but I was almost
yeah,
like a brick wall. Like I think it was like too much for my nervous system to process. And
right.
took me a little while to get out of that.
Yeah, I imagine that the state of your nervous system, right, being flooded with everything that just kind of shuts you down in a way, right? So sort of like
Yeah.
the momentousness of meeting this person, finally connecting with them. It's huge, and I can relate to that feeling to a different degree. By a different degree, I mean I didn't travel to other lands to do it, but I remember the experience of my birth mother saying, "Come around the corner at the airport," and yeah, you don't know what that experience will be like until you go through it, right? Until you're faced with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can imagine, yeah, it just kind of and then that's
Right.
the perception for them too, right?
Yes. And then when you add the cultural difference and the language barrier on top of that, it's like it was just so much for me to process. And really, I think we were speaking the language of the soul. And that's why I put the subtitle A Journey to the Universal Heart, because truly in that first meeting experience, it was like we were using the language of the heart. And it was this situation where it was like everything that I had ever known, maybe everything she had ever known, it just didn't really matter in the moment. It was just like two humans connecting on like a heart level. Um, and I feel like any two humans can do that if we can put our differences aside. And yeah, so I think that by the time I got there, I was still a little bit in shock. When I first met her in at the airport, I was crying. And it was just like I said, there's 35 people waiting for me behind this big
Wow.
glass. And
Yeah.
actually, I think I have a picture of it back here, my at the back of my book. I don't know if you
Oh,
can
okay.
see it. It's black and white, but
Wow.
yeah, so all those people were waiting and they
That's
had some
amazing.
and I was standing there trying to wait for my luggage, and I could just feel all their eyes watching my every move, probably thinking like, "Oh, she moves like that, like her cousin here," or I don't know what they were
Yes,
thinking, but
for sure.
I felt like very much like an animal in a zoo or something. And then I went up to the glass too, and like they put their hands on the other side of the glass, and like they were crying and they were speaking, and I was trying to read their lips, but it didn't make sense to me because they're speaking Spanish, so. That was when I really realized, okay, I'm a fish out of water here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and then when I did actually leave the airport, like that part of the airport to go greet them like face to face, my birth mom, like so she hugged me first, and then my brother, I have two half siblings there. He's 4 years younger than me. He came in, and then I have a sister who's 18 years younger than me, and he was holding her. And so like all of us were in my birth mom's arms at the same time, and I had the conscious thought of like, wow, like this is the first time she's holding all three of her children. And it was my first time ever touching anyone who had my DNA. So it was like, it was so surreal. It felt like that moment lasted so long. Like it almost like felt like the world stopped for that moment. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah.
when you first come to that awareness that the person you're seeing, whether it's, let's say you were a parent and you've seen a biological child for the first time, your own child, or seeing a biological parent or sibling for the first time, it's what an experience that is to have that. And I read and hear that experience from so many adoptees who we all talk about the initial experience of contact with a DNA relative, and you just carry that moment forever and just play it in your mind, and it seems so real, right?
Yeah, and to this day, whenever I see a video of another reunion, like it always gets me. I always cry because I could just feel it's just so powerful. Yeah, yeah. So,
And so you mentioned, interestingly, you mentioned from their perspective, maybe they were looking at you to see if there were similarities, genetic similarities or mirroring of some kind. Even in a shocked state, did you
yeah,
find yourself doing that as well? Were you looking for similarities
yeah,
also?
I was. Yeah. Especially in like my siblings, because I honestly, when I was originally searching for my birth mom, I didn't really expect it. I just didn't really process that I might also have siblings because I had just been so hyper focused on her. And then when I found out that I did, the shift like refocused, almost over to them, like, oh wow, like I have siblings, and that almost seemed like more exciting in a way. And like my younger brother, I mean, like I said, he's only 4 years younger than me, and we have so many similar facial expressions and facial features. And my little sister was like my little mini me. She was only 3 when I met her, and now she's like about to be 18, um, which is crazy. Um, and by the way, I got to go back a few years ago for her quinceañera, which is like a big party for their 15th birthday, and that was so surreal to go there and be a part of it, but then also to kind of think like, wow, like I would have had a quinceañera. Like there was a lot of that kind of stuff. Like even in my shocked state, I was kind of comparing like the lifestyle more so than maybe just like the little minor details and like the nuances of like our similarities and stuff because like my cousins that were around my age were like working every day in the streets like selling shoes like knockoff shoes and so were my uncles and aunts, and then my birth mom like was making empanadas and then selling them in the streets like just like really hustling. And I was in college at the time, and I grew up in like a nice area, and so it just was like just different, like economically for me to see that and then kind of have that perspective of like wow, like I was given a lot of opportunities that like my brother and my cousins were not given. And I don't know, it kind of just like reshifted like my perception of my life too, just like gave me more gratitude for like the little things. Because even like they didn't have warm water when I was there. So I was like having like they were so nice. They like boiled me like warm water in like a bucket, and then they would like give me this other little container, and I would just like pour it on myself and stuff. And then like even not being able to drink from the sink because um the bacteria, like I wasn't used to it. Not that like I don't know if it's dirty or if it's just like my body as an American isn't used to it. I don't know.
Yeah,
But just little things, and like have it like there's restrooms, like public restrooms that you have to pay for to go use. And just simple American modern conveniences that I just think a lot of people take for granted and I wouldn't have even thought twice about. Um, they don't flush toilet paper over there. You have to throw it in the trash can. Like just like a lot of like little things like that. Yeah. Or it felt like big in the moment, honestly. So yeah, there's a lot of comparisons in that way.
see, I know you said you knew something of the culture, right, before you had gone there, but suddenly you were
Yeah, I
just
did.
immersed in it, like there it is, full blown in front of you, and it must be quite an experience. You just described a lot of it, of just how different it felt, right, in the language, I imagine,
Yeah,
and the different energy. And then I know
it
when
was
I
so
was preparing,
different.
yeah, I I prepared those questions for you, and one of them was about and you've described spiritual things briefly here, real quickly, or hinted at them. And I wondered, because I hear this from a lot of adoptees I talk to, and even domestic adoptees, they enter the land where they were born and they feel something of a connection to the land. It feels different to. I wonder if you had anything like that when you got to Colombia.
Yes, I do. I did. But one second, because I feel like my nose is running. I'm just gonna grab a tissue real
Yeah,
quick.
yeah,
One
no
second.
problem.
Just keeping it real over here.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, when I first arrived, actually even just like being in the airplane and looking down at the land, it was already starting to feel very surreal to me. Like, oh my God, like this is it, like this is where I came from, It was just so like this primal need to like touch that land. Um, and then just being there and being surrounded by Colombians, which, granted, us Colombians, we come in all shapes and sizes and colors. So there's not like one standard. But at the same time, I still feel like I fit in a different way, especially after growing up in Alpharetta, Georgia. Because I will say, even though I didn't really feel different in my household, there was times growing up, like in my like early like adolescent years, where I was just surrounded by a bunch of skinny little white girls with blonde hair, and like I did kind of stick out in that way. So then to be around a bunch of Colombians that had similar hair as me, and they were all short like me, and that was cool. And there was a moment when I was there where, because like most of the time that I was there, I was around my biological family, and they kind of kept a close eye on me. I didn't do a lot of like going out and exploring on my own,
Right.
and a lot of that was just for safety reasons too. Like, not that like it was like super dangerous. It was just more so like I would have probably made myself an easy target if I did just start speaking English in the streets and not really know what's going on. And I didn't like now I can get by in Spanish, but at the time it was still like pretty new to me. And I remember there was like this one day where I walked just from like my aunt's shoe store to like my uncle's restaurant, like just like a couple blocks away, because I had been doing that walk with like other people throughout the time that I was there, but it was the first time I did it by myself, and I just had this like out of body experience where I realized that like everyone around me, like they could look at me and have no idea my whole story. Like to them, I'm just another person here, like
Yeah.
slinging goods in the streets. And
Yes.
yeah, and then again to kind of feel like, oh, this is like what I probably would have been doing because I'm just seeing, based on what everyone else is doing in my family. And it was just so surreal. And I felt also like really like, oh, so Colombian right now, like walking down the street and you know, like no one would know. Um and also that was like a spiritual experience for me in the sense like identity wise of like, okay, like actually every human on earth is just living a story. Like ultimately, it's just a story like of circumstances and belief systems. And that's why it was so surreal in that moment because I'm like, my story, my belief systems, totally different probably from all these people's stories and belief systems. I'm sure there's some overlap, but like it was just yeah, it was just an interesting out of body experience. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a lot of awareness. A lot of the things you
Yes.
described are around awareness of things coming to you as you're there experiencing this and making connections rapid fire about I would have been doing this, or maybe this would have been happening for me, or I'm feeling this. Yeah, I can see easily why it's an overload.
Yeah, and at the same time, even though I kind of was feeling like, oh, I got blending, I also still felt like such an outsider because of all those differences internally. And it's just like like as much as I try to paint a picture of what my life was like in the United States, like I just think that what their perception of it is based on like, movies that they had seen and TV shows or whatever. And it was hard for me to really be like, oh, this is like, how I grew up and all these things. Like you can't really get to the meat of that unless you can't and like immerse yourself in it. And so I still hope that one day like I'll be able to like have some family members come and visit me and see this life over here. But yeah, and then there was something else I was gonna say that uh you said something. I think okay, it slipped my mind. I don't know. Maybe it'll
Oh,
come
that's
back later.
okay. Yeah. We can certainly come back if it comes up, no problem. So how long was the first trip to Colombia? How long were you there that first time?
Yeah, I was there for 2 weeks, and then every time I've gone back, I've stayed for 2 weeks. And most of the time it's been just like me staying at the house. When my little sister was younger, we'd play games, and I'd like watch little YouTube videos with her and we'd draw and stuff, and I'd always bring little arts and crafts to play with her. And but my family was still really busy. I mean, they couldn't just like stop working. So like maybe like in the afternoon, I would go to the market where everyone was working, and I would just kind of sit around. So it was a lot of me just observing their life, because they couldn't do it. Like they didn't have the time to just take off and just go take me all over the place, which we did a little bit of that, but it was more so just like there was already a family wedding happening, so I got to go enjoy that, but it wasn't like we went to that town just because I was there kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, there was like a few things, that they did, but I don't blame them because they're just busy. They're working and everything. But
yeah.
there was a period of time for probably about 7 years where I didn't go back because I'd gone already 8 times, and every time it started to become like a repeat event because I was just like in the house or watching them work, and I still loved like being around everyone. Um, but it just got to the point where I was like, okay, like. I don't know. And then I waited, and then my sister, like, she had her quinceañera, and then I went back a few years ago for that. And there's been a lot of I don't know, like I don't want to say turmoil, but like just the dynamics between my biological mom and I has shifted a lot from where I like had originally anticipated it to be. And I think a lot of that came from me having expectations of what she was going to look like prior to me even finding her, and like how she was going to be, and just I had kind of this idea fantasy woman of like what she was like, and then I met her, and then she was struggling and she's got health issues, she doesn't take the best care of herself, very much in like self-pity mode and like survival mode, and I give grace for all of that. But it started to become a little bit of an issue because she started asking me for money. And when I was still in college, I was thinking, oh, well, when I start working, I'm going to be able to help you, and I'm going to, but then I started working. I didn't realize how expensive it is to live. And so I was like, I don't have that much to help. And I was helping when I could, but then I was having my own financial struggles, and I would express that to her and say, I really need you to stop asking me because it's starting to make me feel like I'm just a resource to you, and I really just want to have a relationship. And I know that like she's just, I really think it's just like that survival mode. It's like ingrained, and so like again, I give grace, but yeah, she just kept asking me. So I've had to put like some boundaries in place, and that's been like another like thing that I've had to work through again, like a phoenix rising up like through the ashes, because it's kind of almost like double rejection. I've heard of that phrase before. I don't know,
Yeah,
like or
secondary
double
rejection.
abandonment.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like the original abandonment, but then you find them and then you feel abandoned again in a way. I mean, granted, I was the one putting the boundary in place, but it was very clear to me that if I didn't offer money, there was just no communication. And so after a while, I
put,
was like, I don't want to feel like that. So,
yeah, it put the whole relationship on a different foundation, right? On a different footing, and then
right.
the feelings you have of obligation, and then what adoptees do, we please people, and you
Yes.
you
Ooh, I
do
want to
it
talk
for
about
a
that.
while, right? You do it, and
Yeah.
then till it hurts you and you go, I don't have the resources to keep doing this. But I still need and want this relationship with this person. Can I just have that free of any
Yeah.
other of these constraints?
Yes, 100%. And it really got to the point where I was like almost consciously paying her to stay in my life. Like I was like, I know that this is the only way to keep her contacting me, but it's okay. I understand. I was just giving her excuses, but I finally got to the point, and it took so long. And it's, with the people pleasing, and it wasn't just her. I mean, I think I got to a point where everyone in my life, I had to kind of just take a step back and look at every relationship and say, which relationships are actually reciprocal, and how much am I overgiving just for the sake of not being left alone? And it was crazy how many people actually, if not most, or if not all, like everyone, I was just bending over backwards to fit in all these different molds to please everyone. And it came from that fear of being alone. And then I really, in the what ended up happening is me abandoning myself in doing that. And I finally had to just drop everything and go back within and like do more inner work. And I'm happy to say I'm finally at a place where I know what it's like to be completely alone and feel completely abandoned, which, of course, I always have my parents. I'm so grateful. But like even on an emotional level, I mean, at the end of the day, no one knows like the depths that we've all had to go through as individuals with whatever experiences that we have, except for us, you know? So it's like I really have found a way to like fill my own cup in that way instead of reaching outwards to external validation or, vices or whatever it is to keep me like in a certain way. Um, so I will say like I'm really proud of that, and like I've like reclaimed myself, and now I'm so much better at like not saying yes when my insides are saying no, and like I'm just really honoring
Yeah.
myself and my spirit after almost 35 years of being a people pleaser. So it is possible, guys. It is possible.
It's authenticity that comes up, right? Where you've
Yes.
um, it's very hard to get to that point for any human being, I imagine, and especially somebody who
Really.
carries the wound of abandonment and wants so desperately to keep people in their lives and will
Yes.
do just about anything for that. I can relate to that very deeply.
Yes, God, yes. And with the authenticity, like I actually have a poster right here that says authenticity over everything. That's what I've learned is like I have to be able to show up in this world authentic, because when I wasn't, I was just my soul was just over time just getting so suppressed. And I was like, God, like if I can't even just be me, then what's the point? What's the point? Like I have to be able to just be me. And so yeah, maybe I've even gone to like too far of the opposite extreme where I'm so authentic and so real that it might even be a little off-putting sometimes. But it's all part of me like reclaiming my truth, reclaiming myself, and um, yeah, so that's been a huge part of my journey.
Did your writing have any part of that? What was the catalyst for you deciding to be a writer or to write your
Yeah,
story?
so yeah. So, and it's so funny too to even like refer to myself as a writer, because I never like thought I was gonna write a book, but I knew that like this was a story that needed to be shared because it just felt too big to keep to myself. But actually what started the book is that when I was in Colombia, I went there by myself and I had no one to like really express myself to because everyone was speaking Spanish. And at that time, I don't even think we had, because that was in 2012. I don't think that like I don't know if I had an iPhone back then, but I know we didn't have WhatsApp. So like being able to communicate easily with people back home, like I think it was only on Facebook I would be able to do that. And it just was kind of hit or miss. And so I just really felt alone while I was there and all processing all the feelings and emotions I was going through. And so I just started journaling everything. I mean, like everything that I did, everything I thought, everything I felt. And then over the years, and even when I came back, I was still journaling at just the process of everything. And then eventually I decided to turn that journal into a book. So I kind of already had like the bones. It was just like transitioning it into like a more flowing story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
it was fun to read some of the reviews of your book. That was one of the things I did for preparing for the interview was going, people all across the spectrum, non-adopted people were picked up your book. They said, I didn't know what to expect, but I really appreciated the energy from the author and the perspective, and I'm thinking about things. And did you ever expect to reach people of outside of the community, outside of the adoptee community, who might gain something from your writing?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I did. And I'm so glad that other people can get something out of it. I truly just felt like, as an adoptee, like I knew there were so many who couldn't find their families, specifically Colombian adoptees, and I thought, well, maybe they can live vicariously through this situation and see like what it might have looked like. And so that was like the main reason for me to do it. And then on top of that, just it being like cathartic for me to get it all out because it was just so much for me to contain, like, especially when I came
Yeah,
back to the United States after going to Colombia, I felt so weird because it was like I just had this life-changing, transformational, huge experience, and everyone else is just going about business as usual. Like no one knows what just happened over there, you know?
yeah, that
And
happened to be a
so yeah,
question I
I
had for
felt
you
like I
too.
had to
Is
get
coming back, yeah, transitioning back must have been like, oh wow,
it
what do
was
I do with
so
all
weird. I
this?
remember like yeah, like I remember trying to hang out with people and like just being like kind of aloof, like in my own world. Like things would remind me of Colombia, and then I would be thinking like, oh, my family's like over there right now, like working really hard, and I'm over here like getting a pedicure or something. I don't know, just whatever we're doing. And it was just so, and it's funny. I remember that Christmas, I came back and my family had given me like a digital camera or something for my one of my gifts, and I just felt so detached from like material stuff. Like nothing to just seemed to like fill that like a void. I don't know if that's what I would call it anymore. It just kind of was like life just felt deeper after that, Like so yeah. Yeah, and I would say like that's continued on. Like I've continued to grow and evolve ever since. Almost to the point where like I really feel like the prize in life is that like internal peace and that being able to like reclaim ourselves. Because yeah, like no person, no material item outside of me can fulfill me. And I've had to learn that the hard way, you know? Um, so yeah.
That's as you've been using this word about reclaiming, I've thought about how important that word is for me. I use the form of it as reclamation of taking something back into me that
Yeah.
I was entitled to, but it was given away or taken away, or I didn't have it all the time, and now it's time to have it back, and the strength that it gives me to have it back.
Yes, yes. And that's why I love the Fireside Adoptees logo because I really do feel like a phoenix that has risen from the ashes, I mean, there have been multiple times in my life where I felt like I could just give up, like on the outside things are just too hard. But I've continued to like push on and I do feel like I have a bigger purpose, and even just being able to share my story. Has been so magical and yeah, so it's been good.
So you wrote a second book as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, yes. Okay, so it's called Squirrel's Big Question. It looks like this. It's a children's book, and it is about a squirrel who's adopted by some birds. By the way, can you hear my dog barking right now? Can you hear him? Okay,
I
good. Yeah,
cannot,
that
no.
means the Zoom blocker is working. I'm glad because he's so loud.
I don't hear
But
anything.
yeah,
Yep.
okay, good. Yeah, so Squirrel's Big Question is about a squirrel who's adopted by some birds. He loses his mom and the bulldozers cut down the trees and so it kind of starts a little bit morbid, but I kind of also wanted to keep it like, you know, real in the sense that, adoptee stories are not always, sunshine and rainbows. And so sometimes, that it does like we kind of start off with a lot of sadness at the beginning of our lives, and even when I found my birth mom, I asked her about my birth, and she told me they didn't even tell her if she had a boy or a girl. They took me away immediately, and they wouldn't even tell her. And so, finding these types of things out, I mean, it is, that's intense. So, yeah, so Squirrel's a question. He's adopted by some birds, and he's just kind of living his life. I'll show you a couple pictures. They're celebrating his birthday, and he just feels like he's just a son to these happy parents who love him, doesn't really think twice about it until he goes to school. And let's see if I can find that picture. He goes to school, and his fellow classmates are like, okay, yeah. They're like, why are your parents birds? And he's like, oh.
Yeah.
Or why don't you look like your parents? And
Right.
he's
Yeah.
like, oh, I never really even thought about that before. And so then he starts kind of going with it and questioning things and questioning, are there other squirrels like me? And so as he gets older, once he graduates school, he decides to go on a journey to another forest and he finds some squirrel friends and they teach him about squirrel life. And then he comes back and he feels like more himself, kind of like he reclaimed himself. Like, it doesn't matter if he's a was raised by birds or if he's from a squirrel, it really doesn't matter. And I've had to learn the same thing. It doesn't matter if I'm Colombian, it doesn't matter if I'm American. Like at the end of the day, I'm me. I'm me. Like whoever that is, and that's my spirit. Like I don't even care about the labels. And yeah, so it's kind of like that. And then it does end with like a little guided meditation, which just helps the kids go within and find like a home within. And and yeah, I'd love for you guys to check it out.
Really cool. When did that book come out?
And then this actually published in March when I went
Oh,
and
it's
did the
really new.
Maryland
Okay.
conference. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really new. And I'm still getting my other book out here too. Like I'm not the best. I'll admit I'm not the best with marketing myself. So please like, share if you can. This is my memoir. That's the first two trips to Colombia. And the second trip, I brought my parents with me. So they got to
Oh,
go and
wow.
meet my biological family. Yeah. So that was pretty like surreal as well. And there was a lot of emotions between us as well. Um, where we kind of had to navigate all this newness and be patient with each other and our emotions, different emotions that came up. And I think it actually made us stronger as well. Um, so yeah.
I feel like a lot of the things that we've talked about here have hit on these main things I wanted to talk to you about the importance of your culture and your discovery of it. And do you find yourself at this point more involved and more interested in it, or does it just feel like a dimension of your life, but it's not maybe not as much of interest,
Yeah.
or what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think it comes in waves. There have been times in my life where I was very much into, um, you know, going to the Latin clubs. It was like specifically in college when I was with all those Latinos that I had mentioned before. They would bring me to like these Latino clubs and we would like dance bachata and salsa and they would teach me all that stuff. And I would go to different restaurants and try all the food. And I was like really like feeling immersed in it at that time. And then there was like maybe a little period where I kind of got away from it, but then I actually was married to a Brazilian man for 7 years. And Colombia and Brazil, I mean, they're so similar. And in the years that I wasn't going to Colombia, I was going to Brazil a lot. And I mean, it's crazy how similar they are. Obviously, the language is different, some of the food is different, but the culture itself is very similar. And so, in a way, I kind of felt like I was living that life with my ex-husband, like, even though, kind of like this is what it would have
Yeah,
been like,
very
right?
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we got divorced last year and since then, honestly, like I think I've just been trying to like get myself rebalanced. So I haven't really even thought about like going back into it. But last week I did re-download my Duolingo app and now I'm practicing my Spanish and my Portuguese again because I can get by in both now and I don't want to lose my skills. So yeah, so like in that sense, like I'm still trying to keep myself up with the language because my book is actually available in Spanish, my Home Sweet Casa book. And I would love to like do a tour in Colombia at some point. And I am a Colombian citizen, so like I'm open to like maybe living over there one day. I don't know. So I just want to stay like, I don't want to get too far away from everything. But yeah, but to be honest, also I haven't consciously been putting that much effort into staying in touch at the same time. So yeah.
So where can people follow you or get in touch with you? They'd like to talk or find out more about your story.
Yeah. Yeah, so you guys can follow my Instagram. It's my name, Mariela Andersen. And I also have a website and my books are linked there, but you could get to all of that through my Instagram because it's in the bio. And yeah, if you want to talk, just reach out and I will respond. And yeah.
Great. I had a really nice time speaking with you, Mariela. I really appreciate you coming on to Fireside. It's been a great time. I hope it was a good experience for you as well. And
Yeah.
um, we definitely would love to have a chance to go to a Q&A, but what we'll do first here for everybody on the call is we're going to end the Zoom recording, as I mentioned here. So just a moment, you'll hear announcement that the Zoom is ending. Doesn't mean that the call is ending. It just means the recorded portion is ending, and then everybody just stay on and we'll do a Q&A. So thanks again to everybody for coming out to support Mariela, and thank you for being our guest tonight. And we look forward to hearing more from you. Thanks.